So ever since Vampire Survivors took the world by storm, we've seen a huge saturation of its genre, but Halls of Torment 1.0 has finally arrived, and it's shown us that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this style of game. You can call it bullet hell, bullet heaven, horde survivor, action roguelike, call it what you want, but regardless of its name, Halls of Torment moves things forward, and I think that's really exciting. And of course, we have to talk about the audio and visual presentation of Halls of Torment. That's the first thing you see, and wow, who knew that one day there would be nostalgia for 90s style pre-rendered RPG visuals? The game pulls off that look and feel so convincingly that out of the corner of your eye, you might mistake it for an actual retro title. It's obviously heavily inspired by the likes of Diablo and that whole genre and era, and pays homage to it. And you see that with each animation, enemy design, texture, basically the entire presentation. You can even have pixelated fonts as an option. They were on by default. That's crazy to me in a good way. But what really stood out to me was the sound design. While the game looks like 90s pre-rendered graphics, it sounds like an arcade or maybe even a casino, which are more or less the same thing in the sense of both of them have audio cues that are designed to hook you as much as possible. The constant audio feedback you get about your progression is relentless, and it just keeps feeding your brain feel-good vibes, so much so that you might not even be realizing it as you're playing. It's kind of addicting, you almost need to be careful with it. But it's really cool how they've blended that audio feedback loop with the visual presentation. But enough about the presentation, let's talk about the gameplay. Obviously in Halls of Torment, you slay bajillions of enemies while leveling up, and you do so by either never pressing the attack button or by breaking all of your fingers one by constantly pressing it. That's right, you actually have direct attack control in this game. You also have auto attack, auto aim, and the auto aim works perfectly. You can override at any time with manual aiming during combat, and that's super handy if you have like a super specific vision of how you want to move around the map. You're probably going to want to put auto attack on if you're planning on playing this game for a long time, because there's just going to be so much clicking that you're probably going to injure your hand if you're playing this for dozens of hours or more. Let's be real. The basic gameplay loop has you going out into the world, slaying everything that you see and hoping to survive to the end of the timer, fighting the final boss, and then going back to camp. At camp, you want to make upgrades so that your next run is going to be bigger and better. But it's within that core loop that we get to see nuggets of brilliant little innovation. Halls of Torment feels like way more of an RPG than other games in this genre because there's a quest system that's always guiding you or giving you something new to do. And you can even equip gear on your characters, you know, like ring slots, helmets. They all have different abilities, they all have different traits, they do different things. And in general, you're getting that satisfying feeling of just constantly improving yourself. But the way you improve yourself in this game is a bit more nuanced and a bit more different than other games that are in this style. Of course, there's a ton of different characters to choose from. They all have different weapons, they all have different play styles, they'll end up having different ability combinations that you figure out as you do your runs. And if you've never played one of these games before and you kind of feel overwhelmed by so many different options, if you play with the default sword guy, I mean, that's a great way of learning. He's a lot of fun to play with. He's very good also, and he'll help you sort of get familiar with all of the systems and mechanics in this game. He'll show off all of the potential, I guess. And as you'd expect, you can create what feels like endlessly different combinations of abilities to always keep your run fresh. So you've got everything from your more typical fire attacks that do burn damage or ice attacks that slow enemies down, to even summoning creatures that fight for you. There's kind of a lot to keep track of if you're interested in min-maxing every stat or figuring out the exact specifics of every combination, but the game is so fun and intuitive that you can be more casual about it too if that's how you like to play these games. So you can select the abilities that you think look cool, feel cool, or just are fun to play with, and you can still find success. You're not locked into a specific meta playstyle. Sometimes you'll run into abilities that also have trade-offs, and you'll unlock different variants throughout your runs to keep things fresh. So you're always going to be mixing and mashing different combinations to keep things fun. But again, you don't have to play it in a super hardcore way. You don't have to know every single tiny little detail in order to have fun or be successful. You can be more casual about it. And speaking of all things casual, while this game is certainly not easy, it feels more casual in its approach to difficulty than some other games. So as long as you're playing, with reasonable focus, attention to detail, that kind of thing, you'll be seeing success and winning from the get-go. This game wants to give you that power fantasy. But this game also does a great job of creating those tense moments where it feels like I'm not gonna make it, I'm not gonna make it, I'm not gonna make it. Oh, and then you make it and you're not exactly sure how you made it. Or maybe you are sure, but you know that it was like a low probability play or something like that. That's not to say that the game is, luck based or anything like that. I'm saying that the dichotomy of the power fantasy and the tense moments in this game, in I keep saying this game, in Halls of Torment, is really good. So you're constantly kind of weaving through these tense moments and these power fantasy moments, and it keeps things fresh. It keeps things exciting. You're never really being bored by being too powerful 24/7, and you're never feeling too frustrated by also just, perishing 24/7. Another thing that helps the game feel fresh and unique is just the quality and the design of the boss battles. They almost feel like boss battles from a different style of game because they're so intricately designed to not only teach you how to play the game as you're fighting them, but also to engage with these important systems and to pay attention and, put your focus on there and feel that tension. And the boss battles, at least in my experience, they're never overly difficult, but they give you just the right amount of challenge to keep things interesting. So you go into them and you're like, okay, I gotta lean in, I gotta put up a good fight, but you never really feel like, oh, the game just wants me to die, it's being cheap. Now, moving on from gameplay, we could talk about the full list of content in the game and talk about the arbitrarily large numbers of powers combinations or the hundreds of quests that are in the game or the bajillion different items or whatever the case may be. But if you're interested in that, honestly, you can just check that out on the game's store description on Steam. But what I did want to say in terms of the value for this game is that it's $5. Well, it's about $5, right? Depends on regional pricing. But for $5, you're looking at likely dozens of hours of gameplay in a game that actually moves this genre forward by adding more RPG elements to it, by twisting the structure a little bit, and by feeling like a more hands-on experience. You feel like less of a passive player than you might in some other games like this. Halls of Torment is a hell of a game, and I'm pretty sure history will remember it as one of the pillars of the genre. It's one of the titles that's shown everyone that these kinds of games don't just have to be Vampire Survivors clones. It's a great showcase for the genre, and I'm excited to keep playing it for many hours to come, honestly. I just want to give huge props to the devs Crushing Carrots for putting this all together and advancing the genre, and honestly, I'm just going to go log off now and play some more of it. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time, and for the love of God, can we all please align on what we're going to call this genre? Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Hey, are you still watching? Why are you still watching? The video is over. Are you some kind of pervert? Because if you are, you should like and subscribe and hype.